All right, we are live. Come on in, come on in. We are live. So if you're joining us, we're going to be starting in 1 minute. So definitely share on your page when you see the live pop up. Get my screen adjusted here. So let's see who's coming in. All right, come on in, come on in. All right. All right. So we'll give it 1 more minute as people come in. Please share. Please share the live as you come in and chime in the chat. Where you from or hello. So we'll see y'all out there. All right. So for those of you who are new to S.H.E.R.O Spotlight, so basically every month I spotlight a female that has struggled with adversity but has now come to success. And we'll share their journey of what they've been through, because I feel like sometimes we feel like we're going through things alone. So when you hear somebody else's story that may be in the same shoes as you and see how they have overcome, I feel like that will help a lot of people, because I shared my own journey and I created an acronym of S.H.E.R.O that helped me with my journey. S stands for sacrifice for my child. H is healing from my past hurts. E is evolving into what God wants me to be. R is revealing my truth, and O is obtaining my goals. And so with that S.H.E.R.O acronym, I have picked some ladies each month that have really just blazed the trail in the things they're doing. They're absolute S.H.E.R.Os in my eyes and others' eyes as well. And like I said, in the month of January, we had Teresa Harmon. Last month, we had Jakar Rivera. And this month, we have my sister, Shy Miller. And so if you all watched the introductory video yesterday, like I said, we are blood sisters. We're 4 years apart. We celebrate our birthdays in March. We're 4 days apart in March. And so we're want to celebrate with you all tonight. And Shy wants to share her journey, and she has an amazing journey. And she's going to talk about fear versus faith, and how her journey has come about and the things she's been through to now that she's living out her passion. So Shy, first, I want you to tell the people a little bit about you, where you're from.
Of course, I'm originally from Axton, Virginia. So shout out to all my fam in Virginia. But I moved to Florida in 1999. So that's where I currently reside, is in Tampa, Florida.
Awesome. So first, we're going to kind of talk about your health. For anybody out there that's on the live that's struggling with some health issues, I think it's important that you share your health journey. You was diagnosed with lupus, and I just want you to share like when you first was diagnosed and what you went through and the things that you still currently go through with lupus.
Yeah, so after moving to Florida, probably about a year into being here, I started having like a lot of body aches and pain. I thought I was coming down with the flu because it had been going on for maybe 2 or 3 days. And then like the 4th day, it started to intensify. And the next morning I woke up, I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. I mean, I was just in so much pain. It was actually worse than like labor pains. So I went to the emergency room. And all I remember is actually yelling for my mom, even though she was thousands of miles away. But that's just like how delirious and how much pain I was in. And they had to give me some strong pain meds to pretty much knock me out until they could do a lot of testing to try to figure out what was going on. And then I just remember coming to with the doctor over me, telling me that I have systemic lupus erythemus, which we call it short is lupus. So that's kind of when my journey started of trying to figure out what this was, what that meant for my life, and how it was going to change. And pretty much lupus is where your antibodies, which are made to, fight bad things in your body. With lupus, it doesn't know the difference. So what it does is start fighting your good things in your body, like your tissues, your muscles, your joints, your organs. And that's when it pretty becomes, detrimental, when it starts impacting your organs.
So what are some of the symptoms and things you experienced with lupus? And I know early on in your journey, you lost your hair, and I know that was like significant, and kind of talk about that.
Yeah, pretty much you live in pain pretty much every day, some type of pain. I can usually describe it to people as it can range anywhere from like someone's poking needles in you to someone stabbing you with a knife all over your body, or either you can have like burning sensations, like almost your body's on fire. Some of the things I've experienced is, like you said, I've lost my hair, but thank God, it's grown back. I have experienced, as a result, blood clots. I'm prone to blood clots because of a particular thing they tested for that only 50% of lupus patients get. I tested positive for it. So now I'm prone to having blood clots. So I've had about 3 bouts of blood clots, one being pretty fatal because it ended up going to my lungs and blocking both of my lungs. But thankfully to God, I made it to the emergency room in time for them to act upon it and try to treat it. So pretty much, it's just, like I said, living in pain. You have rashes, sometimes sores in your mouth. You flare up from stress, sun. That's pretty much, the things that you have to deal with on a daily basis.
So you've had some ups and downs with your health. When you get discouraged, what keeps you from giving up?
Pretty much when I go through things, I always look at things as it could be worse. I know there are other people out there dealing with things worse than, what I have. And I really wake up every day being just grateful for opening my eyes, even though I may be in a lot of pain, some days feeling like I'm barely making it because a lot of times you're weak and you're tired. But I'm just grateful every day for waking up. So I just, try to have a positive attitude that I'm still here. Let me make the best of it, despite, what I may be dealing with right now.
Right. And what things do you do to manage your health?
It's like a combination of things. I've kind of, made trial and error through the years of figuring out what works for me. Number one is probably prayer and meditation, just having that quiet time. To get my mind and my body, in a good, peaceful place. Other thing is I went to therapy, counseling. I know sometimes people have a stigma that counseling is a bad thing, but when you're going through, situations, tough situations in your life, sometimes you need that safe space to vent and out, because sometimes people don't understand what you're dealing with. So kind of manage it through going through counseling and learning different techniques and strategies. Such as word searches became one of my favorite go-tos when I'm feeling myself having a bad day or trying to kind of, take my mind off stuff or my pain. I do word searches, or even coloring. They have adult coloring books now. So I know it sounds crazy, but it's soothing to color it, mind off what you're dealing with sometimes, especially when you're in pain.
Right. So yeah, speaking of therapy, and with me being a therapist, I think that's a big thing that, especially in the Black community, we kind of shy away from that. But I think it is important. I'm glad that my profession is evolving, that more people are being open about their problems and seeking therapies, but it's still a ways to go. But yes, it is a great thing. Of course, sometimes the first therapist you get might not be the perfect match, but doesn't mean that you should stop there, because we have different personalities. And I know with you, you've tried different therapists as well. But definitely keep looking till you find the right match, because the good thing about therapy, you can just be open. You can let all your problems out, and there's no one judging you, because that person's there to help guide you. They're not going to go and tell all your business either, because sometimes we talk to family, because I know when I was going through my deepest, darkest moments, I was talking to family, and I also was talking to friends who were also therapists, but it wasn't the same, because I wasn't being as authentic and I wasn't being as candid, because I was still afraid of being judged with how I felt. And so when I went to therapy, it was just like the rivers flow, I let everything out. I was boohoo crying, and it was just a relief. And so I think that's very important, that when you're going through things, to seek therapy or someone to talk to that you feel is a confidant. And I see some love and some hearts in the chat. So yes, so I'm glad that people are, moving more towards that. And so with your lupus, and I know I heard you say you manage it with meditation and prayer. So how important is your faith in this journey?
To be honest, my faith has been my foundation. I really feel like if I didn't have a sense of faith and a sense of hope, I probably would be in a discouraged place, because it can be tough when you wake up every day and you're in pain. I always tell people, don't take your health for granted. Waking up every day being pain free is a blessing, because when you're living a life like this, where every day you just want to experience a pain free day, like if you just have one day like that, you're grateful. So I just really use my faith to know that, I'm thankful for being here. I'm thankful for having the opportunity to wake up every day. And I feel like every day that God gives me here, it's still another day to live out a purpose and to do something good in the world. Right. That's just how I look at it.
Exactly. And just to piggyback on you about, don't take your health for granted. And me, because I've worked in the healthcare field for a long time, when I look at people that have terminal illnesses and fibromyalgia and things where they're in constant pain, and and then some of them still have a positive spirit. When I used to work in dialysis, people who have to be on dialysis for the rest of their life, they will, some people will have a positive spirit, and I can just tell the way you think is what helps you through those times. If you're a person who are depressed and a victim and, oh, whoa, it's me, then you're usually going to feel that your body's going to feel that too. And so it's also helped me not to take things for granted. Like every day I wake up, I be grateful. I don't complain about the little things, because there's people out there that are suffering through bigger things than I. So when I see somebody with a terminal cancer, terminal illness or something like that, and they're like smiling, I can't complain, And so when we're talking about faith, I want to add in family. So you do have a son, and he just turned 10, my nephew, Caleb. And with you having lupus, you were considered high risk and complications. So talk about that. And also Caleb, because Caleb has ADHD, and that's one of your passions and, what you're standing on and what you're advocating for. So share his story.
Yeah. So when it came to my pregnancy, I actually, for a long time, I thought I wouldn't be able to have kids, because with lupus, you can have complications, or it might be hard to carry full term. And then you're at, but 9 years after being married, trying, he came, he was a blessing. I didn't have any complications during my pregnancy, thank God. But it was high risk. So I was always, being monitored or having to go extra times or whatever. But, it was successful. But that was, it was a challenge, because, you want something, you want to be a mom, you want to be like everyone else in the neighborhood. So just having that doubt in the back of your head, especially after trying for so long and it not coming to fruition, you kind of like just give up. But like I said, it's like once I stopped thinking about it, things just took its course, and he's here. And as far as ADHD, when he was about 4 going into kindergarten, he was just on the verge of going into kindergarten. The daycare he was in at the time brought to my attention that some of his behaviors were concerning. As a mom, you have that gut intuition that maybe something's a little off, but you don't want to think that about your kid. I'm just thinking, oh, busy boy or whatever. But after, they put me in this program where we had a therapist actually come to the house, observe him for a couple weeks. And then they also watched him at school just to see like his interactions and his behaviors. And that's when they, told me to go ahead and have him evaluated. So I did have him evaluated. And that's when we got the diagnosis that, he does have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So once I got that diagnosis, at first I didn't know what to expect, because they pretty much just diagnosed you and say, hey, you want medication or not? But once I started reading all the material, it just did something to me, because I realized it was more than him being hyperactive. There were a lot of different things that went into play when you have ADHD. It's more than that.
Right. So yeah, that's a lot. And so when you first found out, how did you feel as a mom? Did you feel discouraged, or did you just feel like you wasn't fully informed, or how did you feel?
Actually, I was kind of having a pity party, because I actually felt like, one, I already had enough, myself to carry dealing with my illness. And then it was like, oh no, now here we go again. Now my son has something. And I was just like, Lord, how am I going to deal with all of this? Because it's enough just me dealing with things. Now I have another thing to worry about. So really became discouraging. I had a pity party for myself for a while, trying to figure it out and how I was going to manage through this. Because as you know, it manifested and as things started to develop and symptoms started to show itself, it became a challenge parenting him when you're barely making it yourself physically and trying to deal with a child who has behavior challenges and has issues. So it really did take a toll on me physically and mentally.
Wow, wow. Yeah, that is a lot. And like you said, you had that pity party. So did you, when we were talking about your faith too, did you ever waver in your faith, like you said, and saying, God, why me? You know,
Yeah.
and when you did waver, what again gave you that strength to say, I can do this?
Yeah, actually, I did. Actually, I started to get frustrated. And you know how you can go through seasons in your life where so much is coming at you, where you
Mm-hmm.
do like question, like, Lord, what have I done? Like, what did I do to get myself into all of this?
Right,
And you feeling discouraged, especially in your faith, because you're like, you know, I'm trying to do the right things in life. I'm trying
right,
to, you know, go to church, read my Bible, do all the things I'm supposed to do. But what I had to rely on was the scripture, knowing that, you know, my life wasn't going to be without tests. It wasn't going to be without tribulations. But what I knew in the end was that he said that he's overcome and, you know, he's our peace. And so I just knew I had to go back to the word, what I've always known, what I've always stood on, and not let this particular event discourage me from my faith. Because once again, it was just another test I was facing. And then I remember one of my BFFs always kept telling me when things would come up, she was like, God gives his tests to his strongest soldiers, right? So he knows you can get through this. So you just have to keep persevering. So to me, it was like having friends like that who encouraged you, who spoke word
right,
into you, and then praying and then just staying strong and knowing you can't look at your situation right now. You can't look at what you're in. You have to keep pushing through. You have to keep
right,
pushing because you know on the other side, he's done it before. He'll do it again. He'll get you through
right.
this. So yeah.
That was good. So a lot of love in the chat. Hey, Erica says yes, the word. Kia, hey Kia. Sister Elsie, just Demetrius, faith is our great. Yes, gratefulness. Yeah, so a lot of great comments in the chat about that because we do all have our struggles sometimes, and sometimes we do our faith do waver. And speaking of tribulation, so on top of you having lupus, a child with ADHD, then you went through a divorce.
Yes.
So then he was just like, okay, and now another thing. So when this
Exactly.
happened, how did it change you and your perspective on life?
Once again, it was that same thing where it was like, not again, Lord. Like, what in the world am I doing? Like, why do you keep giving me all of this? Like, why am I going through this? I mean, honestly, I just couldn't fathom it. I was like, I don't know
Right.
what's going wrong in my life, what I'm doing right, but why am I getting all these tests and these challenges? And, you know, that one probably was one of the toughest ones for me because, you know, when you get married, you think you're going to stay married forever. You don't think, you know, you don't believe that you're going to get divorced. This is the person you're supposed to be with. So that was hard because what happens when you get married, well, with me, I felt like I kind of lost myself because my marriage, my family became my everything. So that was my world. So I kind of like poured everything into it. So then when you lose it, you're at a loss.
Right.
I mean, you go through all kind of emotions where you feel like a failure because it didn't work. You question yourself, like, you know, am I a good
Right.
wife? I do wrong.
Right.
Then I thought about my son because, you know, we had a child. So then like what effect was this going to have on him and how are we going to get through this? And now I went from a 2 household income to now a 1 household income, living a certain way, you know. So now it's like all of that change. So then my mindset had to change, my perspective had to change. And I had to figure it out. I really had to be, you know, adaptive. I had to just adapt, right? And you had to adapt quick because this was your new life now. And you had to figure it out because I had a child to be in charge of and to be an example for. So it was tough.
Right. Yeah. And I agree to that because we kind of went through a divorce around the same time I'm after you, but you were with your husband longer than me. And it was hard. And then the sense of failure also. And then also, you think about the signs, like there were signs when we were dating. So that's why I tell people who are single, who are dating, take your time. Don't
Right.
jump into marriage because of society and things like that, because they take your time, because the worst thing to do is get in a marriage with the wrong person, basically, and having to divorce, because nobody wants a divorce. I didn't go into this to get a divorce. And then having to deal with that, and especially when you have a child and trying to have those conversations with them, it's tough, you know. So speaking of that, like, how did this impact your son, and what conversations did you have with him?
Well, the good thing when it happened, he was like a year and a half. So he was really small. So he really didn't comprehend at the time what was going on. But it's later when he probably was about 5, 6, he started to realize once he got around other kids that, hey, mom and dad should be together in the same household. Something's a little off here. And then he went through periods where, you know, he was like missing his dad. Like he would cry, he would go in a corner, grab his dad's picture or something. And I knew then, I was like, okay, I've got to find a way to explain this on his level, and help him to talk through these feelings. So pretty much the way I explained it to him, because, you know, sometimes in preschool or in school, kids bump heads. You know, they have two little friends, they can't get along and they have to separate those kids. So I kind of used that analogy that, you know, unfortunately, you know, me and dad were friends, but we started bumping heads. So we had to go our separate ways. And it doesn't mean that we don't care about you or love you. We still love you. It has nothing to do with you. It's just big people stuff. You know, sometimes big people have feelings too, and they just don't, you know, just don't work them through. So once I did that, you know, it kind of, you know, made things better. And then I would make sure I kept the conversation open for him to talk about any of his feelings. When he felt sad, we talked about emotions. And then also I made sure that I never said anything negative about his dad. Because I've seen too many times where women, if they're having issues with the father, they'll, you know, put that on the child or either try to keep the
Right.
child away. But what you're doing in that case is you're really hurting that child, because you're just causing more pain to that child. So I really try to work hard at, you know, despite our differences, is to make sure my child's okay and that he spends as much time with his dad as he can to build that relationship and that bond so that he knows his dad cares about him and I care about him.
And I think that's key. That's a big point, you know, not to bash the other parent. You know, in my situation, my child's father is pretty much absent. Your child's father is, you know, in his life or whatever. So again, it goes back to, I look at it like this: she is part of him. You know, she's part of his DNA. And so I'm not going to talk bad about him. I give that to her to have a form of relationship to him one day. I'm always open to the possibility. But like I told her one time, it doesn't matter how I feel, it's about you. So if you get older and say, I want to have a relationship with my dad, that's your prerogative. Don't worry about me, because I would hope that one day that they'll have a relationship. But and if they don't, that's her prerogative as well. So you have to be supportive, but not going and saying negative things, because you have to let them form that relationship with that, you know, and have that their idea of that person, not your thoughts and your feelings.
Right.
So I think that's very important, not to create that negative narrative. And, you know, and I see it time and time again, even on social media, where people are bashing each other on social media. And it's just like, one day that child is going to see that. Or how do you think that child is affected? Or better yet, you guys might end up working everything out, but now everybody know your business.
Exactly.
So it just takes a bigger person just not to do that, and just, you know, again, stay strong, you know, have those open conversations. Because I tell my daughter all the time, you know, I don't want her to ever hold those feelings in. Although my father was always in my life, I don't necessarily know how she feels or walk in her shoes not having her dad there. But I know people, and I have a great circle of friends and family who have the same experience of not having their parent in their life, so that she can talk to them, but always knowing that you have people around you that love you and support you. And I think that's the key, to let them know that they're loved. So speaking of divorce, so after divorce, life after divorce, so how do you heal, and how are you open to dating after divorce? Because after being heartbroken, it's hard to get out there. And I know that there may be somebody in the audience, and if you got a thumbs up, if you want to put, yes, that's me, you know, put it in the chat, you know, so it may be struggling with that, on how to date after divorce.
Yeah, it's hard out there. I can say that. It wasn't easy to step back out there, because one, now your heart's been broken. So that comes with like trust issues, maybe building
Mm-hmm.
up a wall, to kind of let it down again. So it's kind of hard. And then the other thing too is like, I was like, I hadn't dated in 14 years, you know? So, oh my God, I don't even, you know, by now it was like online dating. So I'm like, what's online dating? Like, I'm supposed to like go out here and try to find somebody online? Like, this is really weird. So one of my
Right.
friends at work encouraged me to try it because a couple people had met people that way. But it was the oddest thing for me. I'm like, so I'm looking at these people, not really knowing who they are. And they're saying they're like a baller or whatever. And I'm like, I have no clue who these people are. And you think I'm going to wear? So I was like, no, I don't think
Right.
this is me. So, about that time, that's when, my now husband, he had approached me because he didn't know I was even divorced, because I try to keep my personal business to myself.
Right.
In that time, you're still grieving in a sense, because you've suffered a loss, right? And when people come and start asking you about it and getting into your business, sometimes it makes it even harder to try to heal and get past that. So, he didn't even know. So when, talking, I was like, oh yeah, I'm divorced or whatever. And then, a couple more times in passing, he finally made the move to ask me. And I'm going to tell you guys, I was scared to death because I'm like, I don't know whether to say no. I don't know whether to say yes, because it's like, suppose this guy doesn't work out. We were friends before and now we get angry with each other. It's like, it was a lot to think about.
Right.
And so luckily, I actually called Mom. I called her the relationship counselor. I called her and asked her for advice. And she was the one who said, just go ahead, try it. Like, he's, at least him. He's not some stranger you're meeting online.
Right.
I feel, but, so yeah, once I did that, and I went back and said, okay, I'll go out with you. And it was like, it went from there, but it was a challenge of having to trust. And then too, once I went out with him, I kind of made my issues known, like, this is what I was looking for. I'm just getting out of divorce. I'm not really comfortable yet. So I just kind of, yeah. But it's tough getting back out there.
It's tough. And it's, even if you're single, it's hard out there. And it's for me, it's hard for me too. I mean, because I've been single for 8 years. And just healing. But I would say to anyone, first, you want to heal. So if it's going to therapy or it's just working it out on your own or using your faith, whatever it is, first heal, because you don't want to put a Band-Aid on it. And then it's just that it hasn't healed. And so when that person comes, you still have that sore there. And then you lash out on that person. I'm still, feeling, I'm still working on my healing. I don't know if I'm all the way there. But I think it's important that you do heal, but no, to give it a try. Definitely give it a try and see what else is out there. But I would say, first, take care of you, take care of your family first. And I feel like if you pray, God will send that right person to you in the right time. I think that's key. Just being patient. Because I think, again, we jump in too soon because, again, society and the pressures and stuff, and sometimes just wanting to have someone and low self-esteem and things like that. But usually that doesn't go over well. So just take your time. Take your time and take care of you. Yeah. And so next, I just want to talk about your career. We jump into the next level. So you've been in corporate America for a long time, working for the same company for a long time. And recently you left your 6-figure job to walk out on faith. And so share that with us.
Yeah. So I've been at the same company 22 years, pretty much like almost like half of my life. So it was all I knew. I didn't know anything different. And I was thankful for being there because, I've had many opportunities. I was blessed, and it allowed me to do a lot of things that I've always wanted to do. But it came to a point where you have this feeling on the inside, like there's more for me to do, like there's something else missing. And then I tried, going to try different roles at work, and I still got the same feeling like, it's just not cutting it. Something is still missing. So I ended up going out for surgery for about 4 months. And it was during that period that being away from it, it allowed me to think and really like search my heart and just realize, like, is this what I wanted to spend the other half of my life doing? Right. And living. And, it had become a situation where I was working a lot of hours. I was under stress. I was feeling burnt out. I was not feeling valued. So I'm like, you know what? I think it's time for me to pull the trigger. I think it's time for me to leave. And thankfully for us, my husband had already, left prior to me. So we had already kind of planned financially for his exit and had things in line for him to leave. So it just made that transition for me even easier. And then, I just had peace. Like at first I was really, really scared. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. it was hard because it was all I knew. And really, it's almost like my job became my identity. Like I made my job who I am, but that I realize now that's not who I am. My job is not who I am. It's just what I do. Right.
Right.
But
Exactly.
It gave me that opportunity to search and see, like, who are you? Who do you really want to be? What's the legacy you want to leave behind? How do you want to impact, or what good do you want to do? So that's how it, came into me finding out about ADHD and becoming a coach.
I think too, like you were saying, finding that balance, like you was getting stressed out, but also your health, saying you had to be mindful of that because it started impacting your health because of the stress. And you have an autoimmune disease that is, if you're stressed out, it can flare it up basically. And so you were having that. So again, finding that balance. And when you saw that you were overwhelmed, was like, okay, I need a change, and stepping away. And you made a good point about sometimes our identities are wrapped up in our jobs and what we do. And so when that's gone, it's kind of like, who am I? I have clients that come to me for therapy and they're wrapped up in their job that they don't even know who they really are. They're one person at work and they're like this boring person at home and they don't know how to combine the two. And so it's a struggle for them because they look at all the accolades they get on their job, they're an overachiever, but it doesn't equate in their personal lives. So I think that's important, that again, finding that balance. So what would you give, what advice would you give a woman, especially a woman, who's trying to climb the corporate ladder? Because you were a manager for a while. And like I said, you worked at the same job for a long time. And then also, what was the most challenging and most rewarding being at the top or in a management position?
Yeah, one of the best parts of it is, for African Americans, sometimes it's not a lot of us in management roles. So to me, part was just being that example and pushing other females to let them know that they can do this. And really having a seat at the table to have a voice, in some decision making. So that was the good part. And then, of course, the money was, something that I wanted to work towards. It was a goal of mine. And, when I finally achieved it, was like, yeah, I finally did it. And then the other part was just being able to help people and influence people and help people to, grow and develop in their careers as well. So that was probably the biggest thing of being there. And then as far as what I would advise other women who are trying to climb the ladder, one, I would say be confident in your strengths. You have to know what your strengths is and what you bring to the table, so no one can make you feel weak, right? And the good thing about the circle of managers I was in at one point in time, we each knew what each other's strengths were. We didn't get like jealous or intimidated, but we used each other's strengths, right? Oh. So you have to know what your strengths are. Are you a planner? Are you an initiator? Are you creative? Like what is your strength that you bring to the table, and use that. And don't be afraid to use it, right? Because it's valuable. Add to your team. The other thing is be persistent. Don't give up just because you don't get one role. Right. It makes something else better for you out there. So don't give up just because you didn't get the position that you thought was for you. Because sometimes I've learned what you thought was probably not the right job. That's why you didn't get it. And it was something better for you. And then the last thing is, when you're waiting to get your dream job, focus on you. Like, what skills can you build upon? Do you need more Excel? Do you need to learn more things about Google, Zoom? But train yourself and prepare yourself. So when it does come time for you to shine in a different way, then you have that, volunteer for projects, expose yourself, put yourself out there so people see the good work that you can do. So that would be my advice to people trying to climb the ladder.
All right. I love that, because I'm a mentor at my job and I have some people that are my mentees, and that's some of the things they get discouraged and stuff when they don't get promoted, when they keep applying for jobs within. And I always tell them, it will all work out, say at the right time, because it did the same thing happen with me, when I was trying to get another grow in my career and get another position. It was like I kept getting turned down for certain things. So I was getting discouraged and was thinking about leaving the company I worked for at the time. And I do like the company I work for, and then the right position came at the right time. And I was so glad that I did wait. And then also I told them not to be negative. Don't start talking negative and telling people how you're feeling, because, believe it or not, a lot of things people get promotions based on who they know, not necessarily skill sets and how your behavior is. People forget that they get evaluated not only on your metrics or your performance, but also your attitude. I hear managers all the time, like, this person don't have a nice attitude, so no, I'm not doing that for them. So that's very important. But also look to see what your company can do for you. My company offers so many different programs. I started getting involved in different programs, get my name out there, building my skill set. So when it was time, like you said, I was prepared. So that's key. So instead of having a pity party, so see what you can do to build yourself. And I think that's key. And so now when you have left your corporate job and trying to find your passion, it was funny because when she left her corporate job, she was talking about she wanted to do all these things and, you know, she wanted to do something else. And me and my other sister was like, girl, I'll be at the house chilling with my feet up. But she didn't. And she was just like, no, I can't do that. I want to do something. I'm like, I would be at the house, not even caring to work. Because your husband basically said you didn't have to, right? But you pursued your passion. And let's talk about that. How did that come about?
Yeah. So yeah, most people would think, girl, chill at this moment, enjoy this time, but it's just something in me wouldn't let me. Like, I guess because I've been 22 years of working. And like I said, your identity being wrapped around what you do, it was just that push that I've got to find something to do. I know there's something out there to do. And it's like, I just wanted to figure out what it is. Right. And so trust me, I went back and forth. Like every week, my husband's like, Shy, every week you have a new job that you want to do. Like, okay. Right. Chill out. And it was like I was forcing myself to go somewhere that it wasn't time for me to go yet. Really, it's almost right. Like I want you to rest right now. You spent 22 years out here doing and working and, you know, striving to be what you wanted to be. Chill, right? So it took me a second first to learn to rest and embrace that resting period. And then in that rest, that's when I found answers. Like one of my friends said, be still, right? Be still. Right. And God was able to speak to me during that time to kind of like open up doors, connect me to the right places, the right people to figure out like what route I was supposed to go. Because I was going left, right, straight, backing up. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I was kind of in a state of confusion, but I knew I wanted to help parents and ADHD kids. I just didn't know the route because there's so many routes out there. But, right. You know, it worked out. And I just kept feeling this, you know, passion in me to just, you know, you've got to step out now. You've got to step out now. So I did. And, you know, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I'm just loving talking to parents and just being able to resonate with them. And it goes back to what I said kind of further on in the beginning. Sometimes you're wondering why you're going through stuff. When I kept saying earlier, like, Lord, why am I going through it? Why does this stuff keep coming at me? That's what I through that period. It was all happening for this time and season because I needed to go through all of that so that I could help other parents who are experiencing different things so that I could speak life into them. I could help them with tips and strategies to help them get through their parenting. And I can say, hey, look at me. I made it through and so can you. So sometimes when you're questioning why you're going through things in life, it's really a purpose to it. You may not know now what it is, but trust me, it's going to pan out. It's going to show itself eventually and it'll make sense. Like the puzzles will start like putting together and that big picture will make sense as to why I went through that, you know, and it's like people say in church, you know, that was my testimony, you know, right. It was, but it's true. It's like, I understand now why I have gone through everything I've went through.
All right. Amen to that. I want to bring my tambourine out, girl. I like that. But I want you to promote your business. What's the name of your business? Share that with the people.
It's C ADHD Solutions. And it's where I'm helping frustrated parents who are parenting children with ADHD and trying to manage all the different symptoms and challenges that comes with that. So I am in 2 weeks, I'll be a certified parent coach. And as well, I'm actually a certified positive discipline educator as well, where we kind of teach you different parenting methods. And what I love about that, it actually makes you experience different life activities to put you in the mindset of a child. So you really understand what your child is dealing with. Because sometimes as parents, we're like in commando authoritative mode. And sometimes we stop to pause to really understand what is my child dealing with this day and time. This day and time is different. We have so much more stuff that we didn't deal with when we were growing up, from social media to bullying, electronics, the pressure of school. Curriculums have gotten stricter and just more challenging. So it's just a lot of pressure for kids. And I always encourage parents, if you don't take time to really talk to your kids versus talking at your kids, you're going to miss some important moments to help and support your kids for turning into a good functional adult.
And that is right, because, you know, so funny because when I talk to my parents about my child, they're like, "Oh, do this," the old school way of how they used to do us. But we try and tell them these kids is different.
Yeah.
I can do that and this and the other, and they still be doing the stuff they were not supposed to do. I mean, they just different. They built different, y'all. Trust me. So if you got kids out there, shout it out. I mean, they different, ain't they? But so that old school parenting really don't work. And like you said, talking with them, having conversations with them. It was funny because Taya recently was in a spelling bee at her school. She volunteered for it, and so she had to do a lot of studying. Thank God for my mom who helped me with doing the spelling words. It was a lot of spelling words. And so the day of when we were going to school, I'm like, "How do you feel?" She was just like, "Mommy, I'm okay with winning third place. I mean, because first place is too much pressure." So I'm like, "Who says that? Most people want to win." And she actually came in third place. So I was like, "Oh, well," but she was right because it was a lot of pressure. Because things are a little bit different, I mean, than it was when we were kids. And I think about it too, when I was a kid, it was like, we just played outside and had fun. We didn't have a lot of worries in the world. These kids, they've been through a pandemic, and that has impacted children as well. So if you haven't talked to your kids about that, I think it's important to talk to them about it because it has impacted them in certain ways.
Right.
So the last question, I see some people in the chat putting their thumbs up and smiley faces, and I did put your business name in the chat as well. So the last question is, what is your best advice or greatest lesson learned about parenting?
It would probably be the biggest thing is be careful as a parent, the expectations you put on your child that are pressures that you have, right? I kind of compare it to like the old saying, don't keep trying to keep up with the Joneses, with materialistic stuff. Sometimes as parents, we do that too. So if Johnny over here is making straight A's, you're just pressuring your kid to make straight A's too. But the truth of the matter, their best may be a B. Their best may be a C, right? Because of different things or learning difficulties or what have you. So sometimes I find parents put a lot of pressure from themselves onto their child, which then makes for a stressful and chaotic household. So I would encourage parents, number one, get to know your child, know your unique child, because every child is different. So you can't compare your child to someone else's child and how they're rearing them, because that might not be the way for you to parent. And when you don't do that, it's just going to cause issues and pressure, self-esteem, confidence, all kind of things, for your child, because they're always going to feel like it's them when really it's the parent putting all these different expectations on their child that may not be obtainable, right? And then another thing I always tell parents, give your child a survey about you. If you ever want to know something, ask your child what they think about you as a parent. And it's not to criticize you, but it's just like I say in corporate America, we send out customer satisfaction surveys, but we did that to find out where we were kind of missing it, how we could improve, how we could get better, and how we can make customers more satisfied, and happy. So it is with parenting. Find out where you're missing it at with your child. Is it time? Is it the way you're communicating with them? Because a lot of times what happens, instead of having a conversation, we're having confrontations. And what we find out is really because the way the parent is initiating the conversation. And I like to tell some of my clients, if your boss walked up to you and said, "Hey, get to that paper right now, and I need it right now in 2 minutes," versus if they walked up to you and say, "Hey, I noticed you hadn't got to that yet. Would you be able to get to it at 2:00? Which one would you rather receive?" Right? So that's how we're doing sometimes as parents. We're coming out with this strong, authoritative, voice for everything. Yeah, sometimes it's warranted, but not all the time. Sometimes your kids just need support. They need guidance. Because what you're doing is you're training them. You're their training ground. You're teaching them how to be functional adults one day. And the only way you're going to find that out how to help them is you've got to pay attention to them and get to know your child, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's hard too, to train your brain, because those who grew up in my generation, the 70s or older, it was the children should be seen, not heard, So asking them to do a survey, it's kind of like people probably be like, "What? Ask them to do a survey? Who cares what they think? They better do them chores." But I get what you're saying. You're right. Conversation, because sometimes I do have talks with my daughter, and then it helps me to have a better understanding of how she's thinking, because I try not to be so forceful. You know what I'm saying? But you can still get the same thing across with how you talk to your child as well. So, so I just want to see if we have any audience questions, because we're coming to our end. Any audience questions? Thank you for those who have hung with us tonight. And I see a lot of comments. Meek said the survey wouldn't go over well with his mama. Yeah, you in the old school now. So now we're time for our giveaways. We're going to give away one 45-minute coaching session with S.H.E.R.O's business. She's going to give you a free coaching session. And it can be, and mind you, she not only does parenting coaching, but also life coaching or career coaching. You know, parenting is her specialty, but she also does other types of coaching as well. So I'm going to ask a question, and whoever responds in the chat first with the correct spelling, no abbreviations unless it has abbreviation in the name of the business. But anyways, the question is, what is the name of S.H.E.R.O's business? So the first person to respond with that correct answer, you will get your free coaching session. So again, the question is, what is the name of S.H.E.R.O's business? Don't be shy. Triple C ADHD solution. Right, very right. So Meech is the winner.
Oh, this should be interesting.
That should be a fun coaching session for real. I can't even get it out because I'm laughing. But anyways, so now the last thing I want to say is I'm so proud of you, sister. You know, you have really been, you know, my S.H.E.R.O always, you know, as a little girl or whatever. So you are a S.H.E.R.O because S, you have sacrificed for your child. H, you have healed from your past hurts or from your medical issues, from your divorce. E, you're evolving into what God wants you to be, starting your own business, going for your passion. R, you have revealed your truth, sharing, you know, your battles and your struggles. To O, now you are obtaining your goals and your happiness.
Amen.
Having your own business. So I'm so proud of you. And so thank you again for those who tuned in tonight. I do appreciate the love as always. So I hope that you all have a great night and tune in next month when we have our next S.H.E.R.O. Bye.
Guys.